Hello everyone, I'm Chetty. I train video models and build tools around them. What I am showing you now is a ComfyUI node. Its purpose is to create a depth warp from a real clip. This will be the control signal for my CrossView-Warp LoRa. The node takes your video and the scene geometry, then reprojects the footage into a new camera position. Magenta marks everything the original camera never saw. This warp then goes to the model as conditioning. The geometry comes from one of two inputs. You can use a depth map such as depth anything, or you can use Moog, which is built into ComfyUI. Moog provides real metric geometry instead of a relative map. I recommend using Moog as I used it for the training data. The node carries two views and this button swaps between them. The sphere shows you where the camera is located. The warp preview shows you what the camera sees. I really recommend using the warp preview. Let me show you how to generate the preview. This node is an output node. Hovering over it reveals a run button. This builds the warp only, without any other generation. The node keeps a downscaled copy of the clip in memory. Let's look at the controls. Drag the image left and right for azimuth. Move it up and down for elevation. Use the mouse wheel to adjust distance. HFOV parameter is the lens you are assuming. 50 degrees is the default value. Change it if your clip is clearly wide or telephoto. Leave it at 0 to read the lens from Moog. This is convenient but runs about 10% short. If you know the camera used, type it in manually. Then there is the pivot. This is the point the camera orbits around. By default, it is also the point the camera looks at. Pivot override is enabled by default. If it is on, you place the pivot yourself instead of letting the node guess. I recommend this setup for better control. Z controls its depth. Raise Z to orbit something further back in the scene. X and Y slide the pivot sideways and vertically from the center. The source aim option decides which point the orbiting camera actually looks at. If it is off, the camera looks at the pivot, so the pivot sits center in the view. If source aim is on, it looks where the original camera looked. Your original framing is kept, and the pivot becomes just the center of the orbit. You need pivot X or Y to be non-zero to see any difference. The ISO parameter tints every surface in the pivot steps plane. If the tint is on the wall behind your character, the camera swings around that wall. Vertical shift is a lens shift rather than a camera move. It slides the framing up or down to rescue clipped heads. You can connect a depth map instead of Moog geometry to the node. Then depth ratio will be visible along with two other options. Depth ratio is needed because depth anything depth map is relative. It tells you what is nearer and further, but not by how much. The warp needs actual distances, so you supply the missing value here. This defines how many times further the back of the scene is than the front. A value of 6 means the far end is 6 times the distance of the near end. Low values flatten the scene. Okay, so here is the default case that most of you will probably use. Pick your angle, stop, and that is it. One viewpoint held for the whole clip. This warp is your control signal now. Generate. So that was one fixed viewpoint. Now let us make it move. Go to the first frame and press key. That creates a keyframe there. Now set your angle. Move to the middle of the clip. Press key, then set a different angle. And the last frame, key, and one more angle. 3 keyframes, and the camera travels through all of them. Press play and you can watch it. To delete one, press key again on the same frame or right-click its marker on the bar. Interpolation motion is how the camera travels between the keyframes. Linear is constant speed. The easings slow it down at the start, at the end, or both. smooth rounds off the corners. So let's generate. So the node is on my GitHub link in the description. By default, it needs no extra packages, just NumPy and Torch, which you already have. Numba is optional and makes the warp much faster, but be careful with that as it might update packages used by other custom nodes. For depth, it takes Moog, which is already built into ComfyUI. Thank you for watching.